You guys, Chad here with the top 10 list in June. Yes, June. This is basically a video version of a text blog that I wrote today. Top 10 best beers under 5% ABV. This all started about a week ago. I was arguing with Ding again on Twitter. He was basically saying there's no good beers, or hardly any good beers, under 5% ABV in America that are like widely distributed. Like a lot of brew pubs in local regional areas might have some good ones, but like stuff that's like widely available, they're few and far between. And I basically said no, there's plenty of good ones. In fact, I can probably make a list of at least 10 of them. And he kind of scoffed at that. So a week later, after doing some research, going through all the beers that I reviewed and just beers that I've had, I came up with this list of the top 10 best beers under 5%. There's a couple rules for this list. Obviously, it has to be like fairly widely distributed. Like I said, so Surly doesn't count. So that's only available in one state. I can't get it here. Another requirement, obviously, is if I can't get it, I can't review it. So it can't make the list. I've heard plenty of good things about plenty of beers, but if I've never had them, I can't make the. They can't be. I can't honestly put them on this list if I've never actually had them. It's not just American beers. It can be from any country. And it doesn't matter if it's macro or craft. And ties are allowed, but only if they're of the same style. So anyways, without further ado, let's count down 10 to 1. I'm just going to basically read little excerpts from my reviews of each of these beers, or whatever I wrote here on the blog. If you want to skip this whole video altogether, I'll put a link to the blog below. Anyways, here we go. Number 10, Trogue Sunshine Pils. I don't think I'll ever find a standard all-malt Pilsner that will blow my mind, but finding one that's just plain good is a rarity, and I appreciate that. That's Trogue Sunshine Pils in a nutshell, a true Pilsner that's flavorful and highly drinkable, and that's good enough for me. There's a slight starch or cracker-like flavor throughout the palate. Also riding shotgun is a dry bitterness, the kind found in Old World Pilsners. I taste a subtle lemon character on the back end, which makes for a nice change of pace, and adds some hop flavor without distracting from the main palate or deviating from the style. Comparable alternative would be Paul Honor Original Munich Lager. Number 9, we have a 4-way tie. Murphy's Irish Stout, Guinness Draft Stout, Beamish Irish Stout, and O'Hara's Irish Celtic Stout. Many people naively believe these beers would be big and heavy, but most have the same ABV as Bud Light. When it comes to Irish dry stouts, the name Guinness always comes to mind. However, I always preferred Beamish among the nitro-charged lightweight Irish dry stouts. Beamish is remarkably sweet and complex when compared to Guinness, and again Murphy's is too, but to a lesser extent. O'Hara's isn't as well known as the others, but has a little more stout flavor to it with roasted barley and coffee notes, but isn't nitro-charged, just carbonated. None of these beers really excite me, but they're easy to drink and satisfying, especially if you have no other options. A comparable alternative, Victory Donnybrook Stout. That one's only 3.7%. Number 8, Dogfish Head Festina Pesce. It's only 4.2%. While plenty of breweries of all sizes from around the country and the world make fruity wheat beer, especially for summer, Delaware-based Dogfish Head decided to make a truly unique wheat beer with Festina Pesce, an American take on the Berliner Weiss style. It's an overtly sour beer as soon as it crosses the tongue. The sourness is rich enough to notice, but mild enough to tolerate easily. The beer is literally made with peach juice, and there is something of a peach, apricot, and white grape juice taste to the palate. The body is thin, slightly watery, and finish is extremely clean. I don't have any comparable alternatives to that one because I don't really drink that many Berliner Weiss. Number 7, Wolliver's Wildflower Wheat, only 4.25% ABV. Usually I'm not a fan of honey, but combined with the chamomile and the natural banana bread flavor from the wheat and the Bavarian yeast strain, it makes for a great combination. The flavor and aroma go hand in hand in creating for a sweet, pie-like palate, similar to the syrup and crust of an apple pie rather than the apples themselves. Slight cinnamon notes provide the palate with some zip, but the honey sweetness dominates. There's a mild citrus taste in the finish, but next to no bitterness. The sweet taste isn't cloying, and the relatively flat, thin body Makes for a comfortable mouthfeel and super smooth finish. A great summer beer. Some comparable alternatives would be Ithaca Apricot Wheat, 4.9%, Long Trail Blackberry Wheat, 4%, and Southern Tier Raspberry Wheat, 4.5%. Number 6, an oldie but a goodie, Samuel Adams Boston Lager, 4.8% ABV. This is a great transition beer for macro drinkers looking to get into craftier, more robust style without sacrificing the familiarity of lager. Though I've always said this beer could be mistaken for a pale ale if you drink it blind. You don't encounter too many lagers with this much flavor, especially when it comes to hops. It drinks like a heavier beer than it actually is, which makes it relatively lightweight all that more impressive. A great go-to beer when you're at a venue with no craft options. Some comparable alternatives: Anchor Steam Beer, 4.9%. I know they're not, and all these, none of them are the same style, but Samuel Adams Belgian Session Ale, 4.3%. Fairly new beer, getting one of their mixed packs. Sam Adams Black Lager is usually available in its own 6-pack. That's 4.9%. And Sam Adams Light, the light version of Sam Adams Boston Lager, only 4%. Best light beer in the market. Number 5, Breckenridge Vanilla Porter, 4.7% ABV. I had this on tap, and it was as robust as many Imperial Stouts, but when I tried the home version, it was a little different. Mild, toasted dark malt throughout the palate with sweetness in the background the entire time. Minute taste of dark fruit, but nothing not found in most other porters. The finish is what gives the beer its uniqueness, with a burst of vanilla flavor and a quick kiss of bitter dark chocolate. These candy flavors linger momentarily, but then the palate fades away cleanly. Get it on tap if you can, but the bottle is a pretty satisfying alternative. And some other alternatives would be Saranac Vanilla Stout, 4.8%. It's always in their winter mix pack. And Captain Lawrence Brown Bird Ale, 4.8%. Okay, I know it's a brown ale, not a porter or stout, but relatively same. Number 4, Blanche de Nemours. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. 4.5%. I thought for sure some of my favorite German Hefeweizens and Dunkelweizens would make this list, but all the good ones are over 5% ABV and thus weren't eligible. However, I did find plenty of good wit beers or Belgian whites that qualified, with Blanche de Nemours being the best of them. The beer begins with a noticeable fizzy, slightly lemony taste, nothing tart, but a dry, candy-like sweetness like Smarties or Sprees. Orange begins to come through toward the second half with a strong burst of licorice on the finish. As it warms, I begin to notice the licorice at the beginning as well. It's amazing how well it blends with the palate, as it seems totally authentic and is not cloying. This is a really tasty and enjoyable beer. I'm surprised it's not more popular. Some comparable alternatives: Blanche de Brussels, 4.5%, Long Trail Belgian White, 4.7%, and Hoegaarden at 4.9%. Number 3, Fuller's London Pride, 4.7%. British pub-style beers are rarely my first choice, but when I have a good one, I'm always pleasantly surprised by how much I like it. This is true of a lot of beers, but only a few that qualified for this list. The Brits do make greater than 5% ABV beer too, ding. As for Fuller's London Pride, it's pretty much the epitome of the English-style pale ale as far as I can tell. The palate is remarkable in that it's so authentically flavored but not over the top. It begins with a sweet, slightly acidic flavor, much like apple juice. It's accompanied by caramel and toffee notes, making for a delicious candy apple palate. It doesn't change much from beginning to end, although there is a slightly dry, biscuity malt component throughout the second half. Bitterness is noticeable but tame. The finish returns to the apple flavors and leaves a persistent, pleasant, subtle aftertaste of fruit. And some comparable alternatives to this are Wells Bombardier, 4.7%, Newcastle Brown Ale, also 4.7%, and Goose Island Honkers Ale, 4.3%. For number 2, we have a 4 or 5-way tie, or whatever it is. I'm just saying all the Lindemans fruit lambics, they're all 2.5 to 4.75% ABV, very light beers. I'm sure I'm going to take a lot of heat for including these beers so high in my list. I don't care. I really like them. To me, they're basically just liquid Jolly Ranchers, a delicious mixture of fruit flavor, sweetness, and tartness. A lot of Belgian beer nerds chide these for not being authentic lambics since they're brewed with additional sugar. I've also heard rumors that they're brewed with fruit juice or natural flavoring and not actual fruit, but I get to see any definitive proof of this. So while these beers may not drink like most beer, they're quite tasty and light bodied. Their ABV ranges from as low as 2.5% for the Framboise to 4.75% for the Faro. I find them to be great educational tools for showing non-beer drinkers what can be done with beer, and the fact most people like fruit. Some may find the sweetness and or tartness cloying, and that's understandable. There are more refined lambics available, like Cantillon or Three Fontaine, though they're quite expensive, rare, and too high in alcohol to qualify for this list. And the number one best beer under 5% ABV, Founders All Day IPA, 4.7% ABV. We Americans sure love our IPAs, but they tend to be on the bigger side, 6% ABV or higher. Isn't there a way to get the hop flavor and bitterness we want in an IPA, but in a smaller, more sessionable body? Apparently there is, and Founders figured out how to do it with their fairly new all-day IPA. There's an interesting combination of tropical fruit flavor along with a hint of garlic and some pine. The bitterness isn't too strong, but it certainly is noticeable at 42 IBUs, as it says right in the bottle. There's an ubiquitous, earthy, piney character, making it rather complex. As far as the hop profile goes, not much in the way of malt though, just standard pale malt base without much sweetness or distinct character. The mouthfeel is on the thinner side with a smooth finish and relatively clean aftertaste, but at only 4.7% ABV, this is one of the few IPAs you can drink in large quantities without getting bored or overwhelmed. And some comparable alternatives would be Saranac's Session IPA at 4.7% and Stone Levitation Ale at 4.4%. So that's it. That's the list. Top 10 best beers under 5% ABV. Let me know what you thought. Agreed, disagreed. Something I missed or forgot. Like I said, if I can't get it or if I never had it, it wasn't eligible to make this list. And again, it's just my list. I'm not trying to say like the best of all time or anything, but So, thanks for watching, and I will see you whenever I see you. Thanks. Bye.